Welcome to the Commercial Real Estate Academy podcast, the podcast dedicated to simplifying the commercial real estate industry for the masses. Each week, we sit down with industry experts to dissect the many facets of commercial real estate and extract valuable lessons you can apply to your business. Whether you're a new or seasoned business owner or investor, the Commercial Real Estate Academy podcast will be your go-to resource for all your commercial real estate needs. Now, here are your hosts, Raphael Collazo and Jeff Walston.
Welcome to the Commercial Real Estate Academy podcast. I'm your host, Raphael Collazo, here with my co-host, Jeff Walston. How's it going, my friend?
Going wonderful, man. I always bring up the weather, but it's Kentucky and we never know what we're going to get. And I feel like we've had like a foot of water drop on us in a matter of 36 hours. But other than that, everything's going well. Business is actually picking up. That is a great sign for me. So what about you, Raphael? What's going on over there?
Yeah, no, you mentioned the weather. It's been kind of, it's been nutty for sure. It's been raining like crazy. And then the other day, I think it was raining like crazy in the morning. And then in the afternoon, like you couldn't even breathe because it was so humid and hot. So we're kind of in a weird spell of weather right now. But as far as the business front's concerned, everything's going well. I'm working a lot on the retail side as of late. Leasing is up. I feel like a lot of people have been kind of hesitant about investing in commercial property through the interest rate hikes that we've seen. And I think that's going to correct itself here soon. I think as sellers' expectations are being modified based on the interest rate hikes, I think we'll start seeing more activity on that front as well. But in the meantime, I think there's a lot of people in the wait and see category right now. But really, today's episode, it was a phenomenal episode because we interviewed a gentleman that is in an area that we had never interviewed before. I know we've had a lot of construction professionals, we've had developers, we have all these other different types of professionals. But today we're interviewing Jay Sanders, who's a manager at Melrose, which is an exterior renovation and restoration company. They work a lot with, masonry and working with brick exterior. He's headquartered he's located in Philadelphia. And we had talked about how Philadelphia was the original capital of the United States, and the buildings there, a lot of them have brick and masonry, everything else. And so it definitely keeps him busy down there. But as far as the podcast is concerned, we kind of talked a little bit about his background. Similar to a lot of people that get into commercial real estate, it wasn't his first career move. He had a few jumps along the way where he learned a lot of lessons that ultimately led him into the commercial real estate space on the construction side. Next up, we talked about varieties of different work that he typically works on. As we mentioned, they're an exterior renovator. He talked about some identifying leaks within buildings, but they don't touch roofs. They literally focus on the one piece that it comes to the shell of the building. We also touched on a little bit on how they handle the different work that they do. A lot of the work they just keep in-house, but then there's some ways that they modify their projects in order to better serve their clients. And then finally, we touched on drone technology. He's incorporated that in his business over the last 5 years, and he's seen a lot of value both on the owner side, being able to provide a sales pitch on that front, but also just information gathering side from a due diligence perspective. So, I gained a lot of value from the conversation. It was definitely insightful because it was a conversation with someone who we have never had on the podcast. And so I was really, I gained a lot of value from it. Jeff, did you have anything like to add?
Jay was great. I loved hearing his story of how he kind of migrated and grew into commercial. And it's very interesting. I can't wait for you guys to take a listen to it. And I also wanted to say that that Melrose they had the new technology of infrared. And so they are actually being able to take a snapshot on the inside of where the leak's at and what's all wet, and as well as the drone shot like 20 stories up. And so you can really get that complete report of inside and outside of your building. It's like invaluable, in my opinion, to get a type of report like that, because that can make or break a deal. So for all you commercial agents out there that are listening, I highly suggest you listen to this episode, because I know that this will help you with putting a tool in your toolbox. And I also want to say that I haven't asked for all the listeners out there. We appreciate for all the things that you have been giving to the show. but my ask is to recommend one other person that you might find that can benefit from the show. I know I've asked that for the last, I don't know how many episodes, but I'm going to keep asking because I believe that's how we are going to help grow. And I appreciate everyone that has been recommending other people as well. So
definitely. No, I couldn't agree more. And obviously we're humbled by the support that you guys have shown us over the course of the last year and a half, or actually just over a year now that we've been doing it. We do greatly appreciate that. And along with Jeff's suggestion to share with one of someone you think would be of value to, we'd also greatly appreciate if you guys could drop a review on the podcast. It really helps with the algorithm and ensures that more and more people can actually listen to what we provide as far as content's concerned. So if you don't mind, don't do it while you're driving. If you guys are driving, obviously wait until you stop. But if you get a chance to be able to stop and go to Apple Podcasts and leave us a 5-star review. And if you guys are watching this on YouTube, please like and subscribe to this channel. It does help with the YouTube algorithm and ensures more and more people can actually listen to what we have to say. And ultimately our guests as well, who are providing the real insights to the conversation. So again, thank you all so much. So without further ado, let's go ahead and dive into the podcast. Well, good morning, Jay. Great to see you.
Good morning.
Thanks for coming on, Jay. Appreciate you coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, we're honored to have you. It's exciting to learn a little bit more about the construction end. Just to give you some background on our group, I know Jeff is in the commercial contracting space. He's been that for over 20 years now, right? If I'm not mistaken. So he's got a lot of the experience on the construction end, and I'm still learning a lot just on the brokerage end about things to consider as you're looking at property. So I think it's gonna be awesome to kind of dive in and learn a little bit more about what you do.
Absolutely.
Definitely. No. So what we typically do when we first get started is we like to learn a little bit more about the person that's across the table from us. So if you don't mind kind of sharing your backstory, I think that'd be awesome.
Sure. Absolutely. Well, I started out with the proverbial paper route, actually delivering papers when I was about 12. Eventually, when I was 15, I lied, said I was 16 to get a dishwasher's job, and got into landscaping, worked in restaurants for a while, and then I got into construction. Something I have in common with Jeff is I had a Serv Pro in the fire damage, water damage restoration business, and had that for 2 years. Ran that with a partner, and that was in my early 20s. So that was kind of like my college, is what my father put it. Learned a lot, as you know, Jeff, owning a company and all the different aspects. And then I got into more and more construction through fire damage, water damage restoration, eventually framing houses. And then I got into commercial construction, which I've been doing for over 25 years now.
Amazing, man. Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah. And the longevity, like I feel like a lot of people, that we talk to, and this is great. This is one of the great things about the podcast is we get to interview people like you who have so much a wealth of knowledge. And, it's also interesting to say that, a lot of people who get in the commercial space, that wasn't their first career. They may have done something different prior to that. And then it just kind of, they fell into it somehow. That's kind of what happened to me in my journey. And I'm still early on in the journey, but it's always interesting to hear where people have come from as far as their experience is concerned. So
that is a great point. I always ask when I meet a property manager or a building manager, how long you been here and how did you get in the business? And there's always an interesting story of how they got into it. Usually they started out in the trade of some sort, HVAC or mechanical or plumbing. And then they just started working, for a period of time. And then they went for the hospital or apartment community they worked for. And that's how they ended up in the business.
Yeah. It's interesting how you kind of graduated, as you said, through the restoration business. That's definitely a school all in itself. It's a lot to learn through there, and I'm sure we could do an entire podcast just on restoration.
Absolutely.
So what I really wanted to know is actually what got you interested in commercial more so than like residential. Like what led you there? Can you kind of elaborate on that point?
Sure. Actually, it was a funny, I guess, inflection point in my life where I was framing houses as, doing, the nailing and hammering and all that. And I realized that I wasn't very good at it. My boss would tell me to frame something out, and unless you could physically show me what it is you're talking about, I just wasn't picking it up. And I've always been better with people than with actual, wood and hammer and nails. So I worked for a friend of mine in the commercial business, and he was a GC, and that I really enjoyed. I enjoyed project management. I enjoyed working with people, helping them through the problems. As Jeff, you're always running to stuff in construction that you have to work out and solve. And that is just, what really drew me to it. And especially now, what I enjoy about what I do, not only the technical aspect of waterproofing and masonry restoration, which is what I've been doing for the last 20 years at my current company, Melrose, was seeing the work being done. It goes back to the bricklayer that, says, what are you doing today? And I'm laying a brick, or I'm building a church. I mean, it's all perspective. And when I get to see us restore and fix an exterior of a facade, it's pretty special.
That's awesome. No, I mean, in particular, I'd imagine a lot of the work you guys do as well is, like you said, restorative. So it may be an existing structure that has a history already, and you're trying to bring out its former glory, and then also maybe incorporate some of the new modern themes into, just building construction in general. So that's one of the questions I kind of had is what is it, I guess, if you could walk us through an example of some of the projects you typically work on, and then elaborate on that, I think that'd be great.
Sure. I do work for a lot of, again, it's all commercial and no residential. We work on multifamily, hospitality, healthcare facilities, office buildings, educational facilities, colleges. And again, our focus is from roof to grade, anything on the exterior wall when it comes to caulking, power washing, painting, a lot of masonry work, a lot of tuck pointing or brick pointing work. That's our area of expertise. That, and we get involved with some parking garage restoration as well, where we're working on concrete decks, caulking, and concrete repairs.
That's awesome.
That's pretty intriguing about the parking garages. They definitely need to be maintained, even though they're concrete structures. So yeah, it's pretty interesting that you guys work on that, and I didn't know that. So
yeah. And I would be kind of curious about, obviously on the restorative side with the masonry and tuck pointing, here in Louisville, we have, historic districts around town where some of the properties were built in the 1800s, early 1800s. And there's, regulations pertaining to what can be done to the facade. And you kind of have to work around those regulations. I guess, is there something similar to what you guys do as well, where you're having to deal with historic societies or other parts of town where there's got to be some sort of, I guess, checklist of things you guys have to do in order to make sure you complete the project within those guidelines?
Absolutely. I mean, we work with historic societies in the Philadelphia region. We're working with them in DC. Every area is a little bit different in their permitting process, their license inspections, and their historic. So it's a matter of having experience and knowledge in what can be done, what can't be done, and the historic will let us know what their parameters are to help ensure that the buildings that we work on are maintained correctly. And they sometimes put limits on what can be done, but it's basically for the protection of the building itself.
Absolutely. No. And that's kind of what we face sometimes here in Louisville. I got a property in Old Louisville, so a fourplex, and they don't allow you to change out the windows. I mean, they have to be wood panel windows. You can't do vinyl, and there's other things you got to do as well to kind of comply with whatever their requirements are. But it is a process. It can definitely be one. So interesting to hear you say that.
Yeah, one of the things too, in with historic masonry, but more in general, that I'm sure Jeff, you encounter, and Raphael with the brokerage that you do, is a big part of what we do is leak remediation. And we've been very successful in some of our advanced techniques and trying to find leaks, because I'm sure, as you guys know, leaks can be a real pain in the butt. The masonry restoration is kind of straightforward. It's all laid out there, and it's just a matter of restoring what has been damaged over time. But one of the real challenges that we do, and I think what separates us from our competition, is how we handle leaks in commercial buildings versus, we can typically find in a residential contractor. When it comes to leaks, and something that your audience might find of value is, I like to break down leaks into 3 different categories. The first thing that I'll try and identify is the type of leak we're dealing with. One, I look at most leaks as maintenance issues, where your caulking or sealing has gone bad or your tuck pointing has gone bad, and that's just a matter of maintaining your building. So I call those maintenance leaks. The second thing I typically find, if it's not a maintenance leak, is a construction flaw. And Jeff, you know the devil's in the details when it comes to through wall flashing and how a contractor does the work behind the wall that you don't see. If the leak is not a maintenance leak, it's a construction leak where something is defective that you can't see. And the last thing, which doesn't happen often, but occasionally I'll find a design flaw. And that's where you have a leak that is a result of poor design. Now it's pretty rare, but I'll give you an example of one that you find interesting. Is we were working on a hotel in Atlantic City, and they basically abutted a new structure to an existing brick structure. So for a bigger lobby and entranceway. The problem that had happened was they abutted the building and they didn't take into account the through wall flashing at the brick. So the roof line was over the through wall flashing weep system. Well, anytime water gets in that section of brick, it's going to get it right into the structure. So we discovered that through a couple of different processes and basically had to reflash above the roof line to correct that error. So it is rare that you have a design flaw, but it does happen because things get missed in construction, even in engineering and architecture.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And go ahead, Jeff. I'm sorry.
No, you can go ahead.
No, and also the characteristics of brick itself. You know, I had issues with my fourplex one time where the gutter was pulled off the roof line a little bit, and the water was running down the brick. And from my understanding, and I'm not in construction, so correct me if I'm wrong, when water continually runs down the brick, it could seep through to the interior, and that was what I think what was happening in my case, is that it was running through the brick, coming down to the flooring, and it was causing warping of flooring on the rear of the property. And so, you know, obviously brick's going to have different characteristics to, you know, cement maybe and other types of products. So I'd imagine that that's something you guys consider as well.
Absolutely. And again, the way we look at building leaks, and I'll relate this to Jeff because he would know of it, is we kind of take a step back. When you get a sub on a job, Jeff, where he's, you know, specializes in one area, we try to take a step back and say, okay, A, what kind of leak are we dealing with? B, is it something that we can fix? Because if it's a roofing issue, that's not what we do. We don't do roofing. So we try and approach it with A, our 60 years of experience, and two, more of a holistic. We're not a hammer looking for nails, where, you know, you get one guy out and he's going to look for ways that he can solve the problem without considering other options. And that's the way we try and approach leaks, where we're going to look at it and say, okay, how is it leaking? Can we verify it's leaking? And what's the best course of action? Now, without testing, you can't really know for sure. And another thing I think that I'd like to hear Jeff's thoughts on is when I advise clients that if they're going to get other bids or other opinions about a leak, is ask just a couple questions. When you get that contractor on site and he's going to meet with you, Raphael, about your brick, and he says, well, you need to tuck point your brick. That will solve your problem. And that's just the hammer looking for nails. Well, the question I would ask if I was the property manager or building manager or building owner is to say, why do you think that? And let them explain to you, because you're going to be buying his solution, why he thinks that. Now, he may have a good answer. And the follow-up question I would ask would be, what happens if that doesn't solve the problem? Because contractors sometimes will throw you their first idea with really no guarantee that that problem's going to be solved. They're going to do that. And as I'm sure seen, Jeff, you know, after the fact, well, I tried to do what I did what I said I was going to do, but you were left with the problem still and it's not solved. So those two questions are pretty key as far as just getting their line of thinking, why they think a certain way. And also, if it doesn't work, that can open up a conversation or dialogue. Well, if this doesn't work, then I would try this. So know, as the building owner or the broker or the GC, that, hey, if this doesn't work, I know there may be another step. Because a lot of times property managers will think, well, he said this would solve it. It didn't solve it. Now I'm upset and I don't know what the next step is.
Yeah, definitely giving them questions to ask the next contractor as tools will definitely help out, because you don't want to leave a customer who's hasn't done the research properly. So I completely agree with you that you need to kind of educate and give them some tools to help. I do it as well. I give out pamphlets, top 20 questions you should ask, commercial GC as they walk into the property. First
Mhm.
off is, are you a actual commercial general contractor, or are you a residential general contractor who's trying to do commercial general contracting work? So just typical questions. So I really like that you do that as well. It's nice to
Mhm.
know that other people are doing that as well. So I know you spoke of leaks as being like a common issue. Are there any other common issues that you see on building exteriors that you guys take care of, or?
No, I mean, other than masonry issues, improving the aesthetics, leak detection, leak repair, just general maintenance. Sometimes we get in situations where there's life safety issues where, part of the facade could be in danger of falling and dropping on the, sidewalk and could hurt a pedestrian. That's
Yeah.
something we also take care of. So just again, anything on the exterior skin of the building is what we specialize in.
Nice. I'd be kind of curious of what type of exteriors that you guys actually change up for the property managers. Do you guys like change it from brick to stucco, or are you guys building a whole new front entrance, or
It's
what exactly?
typically restoring and repairing what you have. If it's a matter of aesthetics that you want to change the look from a red brick to a different color, we could coat the brick. We don't typically get involved with reskinning a building. That's usually something that's outside of what most people will do.
Yeah.
We're generally trying to value engineer and fix what they have to make it work for them. And
Okay.
if we can clean it, make it look a little bit better, add some aesthetic improvements, we will. But when you get to a point where you're reskinning a building, as you know, you have all kinds of details of windows and doors that if you
Yeah.
take brick off, you're going to go with a new exterior facade. You have to account for all those details. And as you know, the devil's in the details when it comes to building issues. So
Yeah.
we generally don't do that. And it's not done typically.
Yeah. Okay.
For sure.
Yeah. On
So go ahead, Jeff.
Go ahead. You can go ahead.
No. And I guess one thing I was curious about on my end was related to how you perform the work. Is it typically all in-house, or do you act as like the general contractor and then work with some, top providers in the area to be able to provide the services?
No, we typically self-perform most of the work. When it comes to certain aspects, if it's, plumbing issue or electrical issue, we'll, bring in a partner or sub for that. So we'd like to perform as much in-house as possible, so we have quality control, and we're not relying on another company to, provide the same service and quality service that, we always tell our clients we're going to bring to them.
That makes sense.
Nice.
No, definitely.
Definitely way to control the quality for sure if it's all self-performed. What's can you give us an example of something that the company's done most recently? Like it fixed the issue or what you guys did, and kind of walk us through it?
Sure. Well, again, a lot of it's not real exciting more of maintenance issues is what we handle. So it's not terribly exciting or banner proof. But, when we get into say a hotel and we coat the exterior and help them change their brand, that's usually something that is nice and I can put on the website or put on LinkedIn for people to see. I just did a video on parking garage restoration that was a challenge because it was a tight garage in a metropolitan area that was difficult because they wanted to keep the traffic flow going. So to solve that problem, we incorporated using traffic control lights in the garage, which was a big expense to us, but it allowed for cars to get in and out without having any type of accidents, without hurting any of the crew, because we are working in a zone where cars are driving by constantly. So that gets into our planning and forethought as far as how we're going to solve that problem for the client while making sure we restore the concrete deck and fix their leaks, as well as keeping their business open. And that was a lot of paperwork and planning and meetings, and again, just coming up with technology like the control lights to make them work. So cars from the first level would know when a car is coming down the second level. And while we're doing concrete repair, but the challenges of planning and making sure that everything's safe, that got to be a little creative.
Yeah, and like you said, I mean, safety is paramount in these environments. I mean, making sure that everyone on site is performing the work in a way that is safe to not only themselves but also the people around them is part of the process that you guys or partake in when you're working with your client to figure out a solution that best fits their needs. So that's awesome. So one thing I was curious about, just off the top of my head, is you just recently worked on securing a drone license? Is that correct?
Yeah, actually, I've been a Part 107 pilot for about 5 years now.
Oh, okay.
And I got into photography because the work we're doing on sides of buildings is it's great to capture with a drone to get those angles. I can highlight what we're doing. The clients can see what's happening on their walls 20 stories up. And a drone is a great marketing tool, but I also use it in building inspections. And something I want to bring up to you guys that I think might be of value, when we're trying to help clients evaluate what's needed on their building, that a drone is a good tool to be able to show at a perspective that the client doesn't normally see, 20 stories up, to see what's going on with their facade. So besides that, I've gotten into a service that really helps with leak detection, and it's helped with two different sides. One's with Jeff and one's with you, Raphael. We've got into thermal imaging. Yes. And that has been something that we have handheld tools where we can shoot a roof and shoot a facade, but also we can shoot with the drone. We have an infrared drone that I can get, again, different perspectives to show the client where we're seeing thermal anomalies with the building. Besides being the licensed drone pilot, I'm also a certified thermographer. So we can take the data from the thermal imaging and interpret that with our 60 years of experience. We know what we're looking for. We know how buildings are constructed and where they typically leak. And that thermal imaging data is really helpful in us trying to pinpoint the leak. The other area where, on your side, Raphael, where it's a benefit is some of our clients have asked us in their due diligence process, as you talk about before you sign that lease, your book, assembling your team besides your lawyer and accountant, the due diligence process, as you know, can save money down the road for capital expense projects. And one of your past guests, I think it's George Abreu, mentioned all the different details of how that knowledge can help you. So some of our clients that have said, listen, we're buying a hotel in Florida. Can you do an infrared inspection? And we did that and help them understand what they have. So I did that with the drone. I did that with a handheld camera. And that's a great non-destructive tool that your clients can use as part of their due diligence to know what it is what they have and things they can look out for.
Absolutely. Yeah. Couldn't agree more. And then, I've had clients that actually that saved them on a lease, in fact, where we were looking at a roof. They flew up a drone, did an infrared on it, and realized that there were pretty large areas where there was significant leakage. And then they actually got on the roof and looked at it, and it was in rough shape. And, it would have cost my clients well over 100,000. I think it was 150,000 is what they were quoting. And the way that the language was written in the contract for the lease was such that, all responsibility was on the tenant. And so, we kind of pushed back on that, and, ultimately the deal didn't work out, but, it saved my clients a significant amount of heartache that could have been avoided, or would have been just catastrophic to their business. So that's, like you said, the due diligence process is so important. And not only just when you're buying a property, which is obviously, typically when people think that, but even when you're leasing a property, it's just as important because you're going to be tying yourself to that space for many years. So.
Absolutely.
Love to see one of those reports, Jay, especially on the infrared on the interior, and then being able to see how cool it was, being 20 stories up and seeing that drone shot of right where you guys believe. I bet that's so impressive. And I'm sure that's a game changer for you guys when you walk into potential clients, and are able to do both of those. So I can only imagine.
It is. It's nice that you have the experience. You can interpret that data and then give them cool shots that help them see what it is they're dealing with.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know too many people that actually do that other than water restoration companies, but they're not looking. They're just, as they're on the interior looking and not really trying to make this huge report. They're just trying to figure out where this leak's coming from and stuff like that. So I can only imagine how impressed they are, all your clients and stuff there at Melrose. But Jay, we really appreciate you coming on as we start rounding out the podcast here. I definitely enjoyed hearing from, another construction guy such as myself and you, and hearing some of the stories. But one of the first questions that we ask is, Raphael and I are both avid readers. He's more of a book listener. He likes to do the audio books, but I still read the old fashioned way. But so one of the questions is, what is one of the most impactful books? And it doesn't have to be construction or commercial construction or anything like that. It can be any type of book that you've read and maybe since your career or your personal life in a different path.
Actually, if I can give you two, and one has a story, but my favorite author is Ryan Holiday. If you guys know him, The Obstacle is the Way. That book is
Ego's the enemy.
Stillness is the key. I mean, The Obstacle Way has just been great because it really helps perspective. And as you guys know, in this game in real estate, whether you're doing construction or the brokerage, it's all about your perspective and your ability to think through problems. And The Obstacle Way has been a great mentor to me as far as how to look at things and trying to find the way through a problem is sometimes through it. The second book was a book by Robert Greene and the 48 Laws of Power. And the reason why that was formative for me was I was searching for interviews on when Apple started doing podcasts. And I found one where this young kid was talking to him named Tim Ferriss. And that just took me on a rabbit hole down listening to him for years. And that's opened up a whole new world of book recommendations and people that are out there that really smart that you can learn a lot from. And, that book was formative because, again, it took me to Tim Ferriss, and Tim Ferriss opened up a world of, recommendations and ideas, which were formative for me.
That's amazing. Yeah, no, and you mentioned those books being kind of formative in your design. And that's why we asked people this question, because, each person, although we've had a lot of books that were very similar. I know Rich Dad Poor Dad's kind of one a lot of people look to as far as books are concerned, but we've had people talk about completely different books outside the spectrum of anything related to real estate. We've had people recommend Man's Search for Meaning. We've had, now we've had Obstacle is the Way, which I've loved that book. And Ryan Holiday, I've read several of his books, and the guy is, just an impressive individual. And his story before that was just impressive too, as well. So he's kind of had a unique journey in himself, and found stoicism, and he wrote the Daily Stoic and everything else too. So really, really good recommendations there.
Well, I can't wait to see. There's a book coming out of her, Before You Buy That Building, and I'm interested to check that out. I was listening to your before you sign that lease, and that was pretty good. So I'm interested to see that your next book coming out.
Yeah. I hope I didn't set the bar too high. No, I'm just kidding. It wasn't that informative, but I'm glad that you gained value from it. Before You Buy That Building is going to be that comprehensive guide for business owners looking to buy commercial real estate. So I feel like there's definitely not enough information out there from the business owner's perspective when it comes to commercial real estate. So I'm trying to fill that vacuum. So. Well, cool, man. I know. And one thing I was curious about is we typically ask our guests at the end of the podcast to provide something to what we call the commercial real estate treasure chest. It's a repository of resources that we make available to our audience. And, people in the past have contributed helpful PDFs, Excel sheets. We've had people contribute ebooks, really anything that they feel is going to be of value to our audience. And so I wanted to give you the opportunity to share what you're willing to contribute today.
Yeah, I'd like to share a cheat sheet on kind of what we talked about before, as far as when it comes to building leaks, what I would want to know if I was a property manager or a building owner and dealing with that process. So there'll be some things we talked about, some other tips and tricks that how you can vet a contractor and vet the ideas and understand the process a little bit, that I think would help anyone in the business that has a leaky building.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that'd be. I'm gonna look it over. That's for sure.
Yeah, and we talked about due
Always learn
diligence.
something.
We talk
Yeah.
about due diligence. I mean, that's a key part of the process, regardless of whether you're buying, leasing, or even considering selling a property. You just got to curtail people's concerns early on in the process on the sales side. So if you can identify these problems up front, you could potentially, save yourself the heartache of having to, explain away the issues at the end of the day. So I think that our audience is going to gain a lot of value from this.
No, I hope so. That's my intent.
Definitely.
Yay, I want to say we really appreciate you coming on. It was an honor to kind of listen to your story and see how you came up through your career. This is a chance to kind of plug in Melrose as a company and then yourself as well, how people can get in contact with you. If it's email, phone, however you'd like. But yeah.
Yeah, I'm real active on LinkedIn, Jay Sanders on LinkedIn. I post videos and video case studies there into our website and our YouTube channel. I think we're up to 5 followers. But again, I like to send them out to clients just to show what we do. We're a national exterior building repair contractor, and you can email me or reach out on LinkedIn is great.
Definitely. And for those of you guys who are listening, we do provide all that contact information in the description. So if you guys are watching this on YouTube, feel free to go to the description. You guys can access that. And if you guys are listening to this on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, again, go to the description. You'll be able to access that information as well. So again, thank you so much, Jay. Thank you all so much for stopping by and listening to the podcast. If you guys are watching this on YouTube, we would greatly appreciate it if you can like and subscribe to this channel. It really helps with the YouTube algorithm and ensures more and more people can hear this message. Along with that, if you're listening to this in an Apple Podcast format, Spotify, whatever other podcast meeting you're listening to, we would greatly appreciate a 5-star review. It makes a huge impact in our ability to reach a broader audience. So we would greatly appreciate the support. Thanks again so much for tuning in, and we'll see you all next time.